Today I'm going to talk about causatives. These are verbs that have a special function. They talk about influencing or causing something to happen in a particular way. We use the verbs have, let, make, get, and help to form causatives. Let's have a look first at the way we use have, let, and make when they're used as causatives. First of all, we use the pattern have, let, or make, plus the object of the sentence and the base form of the verb to put together sentences to show a connection between the subject and something the subject is going to want to cause to happen, or something that the subject did cause to happen. For example, Mr. Brown has his students do a lot of homework. Mr. Brown is obviously the teacher, and he gives homework to his students every day. You have the subject, Mr. Brown, plus have, plus the object, his students, and the base form of the verb do, and the rest is just more information. What does he have his students do? A lot of homework. Another example is Mrs. Thomas lets her children play outside every day. This one works the same way. Mrs. Thomas lets her children play. Another example, Isaac's father makes him clean his room once a week. Okay, let's have a look at the rules so you can see how this works and what each one of these really means. Rule number 1. Have, let, and make, plus the object and the base form of the verb, shows that a subject causes or influences a person or thing to act. For example, the director had the actor repeat his lines. The actor needed some practice, so the director told him to repeat his lines, and he did. Here's another one. He made the actors wear funny costumes. He's the director, so he's the boss. The actors were required to wear funny costumes. And he didn't let the actors choose the costumes. He didn't let means he didn't allow them to choose the costumes. Okay, rule number 2. If you have someone do something, it means you require someone to do something, or you just ask them to. Here's some examples. First, the teacher had the students retake the test. I'm going to guess that the students didn't have a choice here, that it's required. If the teacher gave them the option to retake the test, we'd say that. We wouldn't say the teacher had them retake it. Another example is, did you have anyone read your essay? Here I'm asking if you requested anyone to read your essay. You aren't requiring anyone to do it, you're just asking. Rule number 3. If we say, let someone do something, we mean we allow them or we give our permission for someone to do something. For example, Jack's mother lets him stay up late. She allows him to stay up late. Rule number 4, and the last rule in this section. If we say someone makes someone do something, it means someone is forcing someone else to do something. They don't have a choice. Here's some examples. She made the child drink milk, but he hated it. This makes me think of my mother. She used to punish me sometimes by making me take a spoonful of castor oil. It was so nasty, but it was supposed to be a healthy thing to do. I don't know if it really was. Anyway, another example is, the lecture made me decide to study harder. This one's a little different in meaning. The person making the lecture isn't forcing you to study harder, but that person is influencing you to study harder. Okay, that's an explanation of how we use have, let, and make. Let's have a look at get and help as causatives. When we use have, let, and make, we use the base verb after the object, but when we use get or help, we do it a little bit differently. We use get plus an object, and then we use an infinitive. Remember, an infinitive is when we put the word to plus the base verb. So this one is going to look like, I get my friend to exercise with me after work. I get my friend to exercise. The infinitive form of exercise. See how that works? When we use help, we have a choice. You can use an infinitive, just like we did with get, or we can skip the to and just use the base form of the verb. Here's an example. We can say, I helped my son to do his homework, or we can say, I helped my son do his homework. They're both correct. But help is the only causative you can do that with. Let's look at the rules. Rule number 1. Get plus the infinitive means to persuade or cause someone to do something. For example, he got his brother to lend him some money. He talked his brother into lending him some money. He didn't make him lend money, but he was able to persuade his brother. Here's another one. The classes get me to think differently about history. Have you ever had that experience where you had a really good teacher who made you think differently about a subject? I have. I hated algebra in high school, but when I took it in college, I had a great teacher and I loved it. It became like a puzzle to me, and I love puzzles. Anyway, the next rule is if we help someone do something, we follow that with the base form of the verb or the infinitive form, and it means you assist or guide someone to do something. You help them. For example, the teacher will help you do the report. Notice that you can use these in present, past, or future. You can also say, the teacher will help you to do the report. Both of these are fine. Before we do some exercises, let's do a quick review. I'm going to give you some similar sentences and explain what the differences are. I'll give you one sentence for each of the causatives I've shown you so far. First one is, I made my sister iron my shirt. This means I forced her to do it. She had no choice. The next one is, I had my sister iron my shirt. This time I convinced her to iron my shirt. I asked her to, and she did it. The next one, I got my sister to iron my shirt. This time I had to talk her into it. I persuaded her to iron my shirt. Maybe I told her if she irons my shirt, I'll make her bed, or something like that. Notice that we use the infinitive this time after the object. That's because we're using the word get. The next one, I let my sister iron my shirt. Maybe my sister just loves ironing. It's her favorite thing to do. So being the wonderful sister that I am, I let her iron my shirt. And finally, I helped my sister to iron my shirt. Or we could say, I helped my sister iron my shirt. For this one, maybe I'm teaching her how to iron, so I help her to iron. Or maybe she doesn't have time to finish ironing, so I help her by doing part of the shirt that she didn't finish. The point is, somehow I'm helping her to do this thing. Remember, when we use help, we follow it either with an infinitive or just with a base verb. This is the only one where we have that kind of choice. So to break this down to a simple chart for you, we have some simple forms and infinitive forms. Have a look. The first one uses the simple form, and it's X makes Y do something. Another simple form is X has Y do something. Then we get to one that takes the infinitive. X gets Y to do something. Then another simple form, X lets Y do something. Another simple form, X helps Y do something. And finally, the other way we can use help is with an infinitive, and it becomes X helps Y to do something. Okay, now let's do some exercises so you can practice with these. For the first exercise, see if you can tell whether each sentence gave them no choice, persuaded them, or requested them to do this. Ready? Let's go. Number 1. The teacher had her class take notes during her lecture. Is that A, gave them no choice, B, persuaded them, or C, requested them to do this? If you said C, you're right. The teacher requested them to do this. Now I know usually we think of a teacher having us do something and we have no choice, but it's possible for the teacher to just make a suggestion. If you say the teacher had her class take notes, she might be forcing us, or she might just be giving us a suggestion. That's how have works as a causative. Number 2, my mother always made me wash my hands before dinner. What do you think about this one? Did my mother give me a choice?
Not my mother. She made me do it. So A, B, or C. This time, it's A. My mother made me do it. She did not give me a choice. And in this case, that's a good thing. You've got to wash your hands before dinner. Okay, last one. Mr. Wilson got the kids in the neighborhood to help him in the garden. What do you think about this one? Well, if you think this one is B, you're right. Mr. Wilson persuaded the kids to help him. Did you get them all right? Great.
We'll do some more practice exercises, but first there's one more thing I want to cover, and that is passive causatives. Do you remember passives? A passive is a sentence in which the subject does not do the action of the sentence. Let's have a look at what a passive causative looks like. A passive causative is when you have something done. So it looks like this. We use have plus the object plus the past participle. For example, I had my hair cut yesterday. Not really, I haven't had my hair cut in a while now. We're in lockdown. No one's getting their hair cut these days. At least I think so. Another example would be, did you have your car repaired? Let's have a look at the rules. Rule number 1.
Use passive causatives with have to talk about services that we have someone else do for us. For example, we had the carpets cleaned last month. This means we probably hired someone, or either we just asked someone to do this for us. Rule 2. The subject of a sentence with a passive causative did not perform the action. The action was done by someone else. For example, I had the plumbing fixed by Joe's Plumbing Company. This means that Joe's Plumbing Company fixed my plumbing problem for me. Next, take note of this. The form of the verb have changes with different tenses and modal verbs. Here's some sentences to show you what I mean. I'm having the kitchen painted this week. I have the kitchen painted every 3 years. I haven't had the kitchen painted recently. I'm going to have the kitchen painted soon. And should we have the kitchen painted? So you can see here that we can use all tenses with passive causatives. One more thing. Take note of this too. The passive causative, have something done, looks very similar to the present perfect, which is have done something. But the meanings of these two are very different. For example, if I say, I never have the house cleaned, I mean that I never pay someone or make someone clean my house for me. And if I say, I have never cleaned the house, you better hope I'm paying someone else, because this means that I myself have never cleaned my house. I don't even want to think about what the house would look like if I never cleaned it, and I didn't pay someone else to clean it. Yuck.
Another way to make the passive causative is to use the verb get. Here's what this one looks like. We use get plus the object plus a past participle, just like we did with have. So we can say, she got her hair done. Did Jack get the car washed? And why have you gotten the tree trimmed? Maybe I liked the tree the way it was. Okay, let's look at the rules. The first one is use passive causatives with get to talk about services that people arrange for someone to do. Have and get usually have the same meaning in passive causatives. An example is, I got my teeth cleaned. This means that I went to the dentist's office and the hygienist cleaned my teeth. The next rule is just that the form of the verb get changes with different tenses and modal verbs. So here are some examples. She's getting her hair dyed right now. She gets her hair dyed every 4 weeks. She hasn't gotten her hair dyed recently. She's going to get her hair dyed soon, and she shouldn't get her hair dyed. Okay, one more thing. Don't forget, when we use a passive, we sometimes use by. That's when it's important to say who did the action, who is the agent. For example, we can say, did you get the pictures taken by your friend? No, we had them taken by a professional photographer. Okay, let's do a little review and a practice exercise to help you remember how this works.
The passive causative is used for services that are done. The verb form combines the causative verbs, that is, verbs that show that someone is causing someone else to do something, and the passive voice, which is when the focus is on the thing, not the person doing the action. So here's the pattern we use for causatives. You have the subject, which is the person, plus have, let, make, or any of the other causative verbs, plus the object, which is also a person, plus the base verb. The base verb, remember, is the verb with no endings. It shows no tense. An example is, Mr. Jones had the mechanic fix his car. The pattern for passives is the subject, which is a thing this time, followed by be or get in any verb tense, plus the object, which is a person, plus the past participle. Sometimes we also add by plus someone, but we don't always say who has done the action. Sometimes it's just not important. An example for this one is his car was fixed by the mechanic, or just his car was fixed. Now, when we put these together, the pattern for passive causatives is you have the subject, which is a person, plus have or get in any verb tense, plus the object, which of course is a thing, then the past participle. We can then add by someone, but we often leave that out. So if we go back to the idea of Mr. Jones having his car fixed, we can say, Mr. Jones had his car fixed, or Mr. Jones had his car fixed by the mechanic. Do you see why we don't really have to add by the mechanic? We assume the mechanic fixed the car, but who knows? Maybe his handy brother fixed it. But that's how it works. Let's take this apart. First, we use had because that's from the causative pattern. We could also use get. They mean the same thing. Then the focus of the second verb is on car or thing, whatever it is. We get this from the passive pattern. Next, fixed is the past participle of the verb fix. This is from the passive pattern. Finally, by the mechanic, or by someone, is from the passive pattern, and it's really optional in most cases. So there's a review of the passive causative pattern. Let's do a few exercises so you can practice putting it all together. I'll give you the situation, and you think of how we could put the sentence in the passive causative. Ready? Number 1. Marco gets people in Italy to make all of his shoes. How can we say the same thing using a passive causative? Think about it and pause the video if you want to take more time. Be sure to use the verb have in your answer. The answer is Marco has all his shoes made in Italy. Did you get that right? You could say Marco gets, but I think Marco has sounds better. Let's try another one. This time the situation is that Jules asked someone to translate the article for him. Let's use have again. Do you know the answer? This one would be Jules had the article translated. We probably aren't going to say by a translator. That's pretty obvious. It could be translated by his cousin, but it really doesn't matter who did the translating. The important information is that he has the article and he can read it now. Let's try one more. The situation is that Janet isn't here. Someone is cutting her hair. She must be at a hair salon. So what do you think is the correct answer? If you said, Janet isn't here, she's getting her hair cut, you're right. You would also be right if you said Janet isn't here, she's having her hair cut. They really mean the same thing.
And that's it for Causatives. Thanks for coming by and watching my grammar videos. I really appreciate it. Remember to be kind to each other and make sure you take care of yourselves while we're fighting this coronavirus together. Take care.